guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Sherianne Ciaramitaro and this is Rowena Francis. So we made the plunge to homeschool our kids this year for the 2020-2021 school year. I've always wanted to homeschool the kids, but Brian was never really on board with it. He always wanted them to go to the traditional educational system, and so the thing that we have in our house is that if there's something that we don't agree on, but there has to be a decision that's made, it's always Brian has the final say, as he is the head of the house and he is responsible to answer to God. So for years, although I've wanted to do this, he hasn't been on board with it. So I've kind of put it on the shelf. I bring it back up every once in a while, and he's just not that into it. But as you guys know, we've been going through isolation, quarantine, COVID, whatever it is that you want to call it. I don't even know what this is, but since March. And so when they announced in March that the kids would be going on a 2-week break instead of just a 1-week break, I had a gut feeling that they were not going to go back to school for the last school year. So I ordered curriculum to finish off the year because I wasn't sure what it was going to look like. Many of you know that the school system was on strike, and one of the things they were striking about was the fact that they did not want to do online learning. And then of course, once this quarantine happened, they were forced to do online learning. So I wasn't sure what it was going to look like, so I immediately went out and got curriculum. And we finished off the year kind of doing a hybrid of the homeschooling curriculum plus doing what the school system kind of sent home. And at first, what the school system sent home was kind of just playing on apps and, play this game or do this game. As it got closer to the end of the year, they kind of did start to get a little bit more structured with it. But I just didn't want my kids to be kind of in that guinea pig, how are we going to do things kind of stage. So I took matters into my own hands and I decided I was going to teach them from home. We absolutely loved it. And then Brian said that since everything was kind of up in the air this year, we didn't even know what things were going to look like. He said if school did not go back to the traditional school model in the fall, that we would have a conversation about homeschooling the kids. And so this was the first time he's kind of had, sort of an open mind about homeschooling. So needless to say, we had a conversation about it and we decided that we were going to keep the kids home. Now there's so many things that are involved with this, and with making this decision, I made this decision ultimately because it was right for our family. Now I'm doing this kind of hybrid model, so I have ordered homeschool curriculum. I am going through my own curriculum. Well, it's not my own curriculum, but we're using the ACE system for the majority of our stuff. And but we are also using the online or remote learning system from the traditional educational system. So we're not sure entirely what that's going to look like. We're kind of just taking one day at a time. But there were a few things that we had to kind of look at for our family and make a decision based on our kids. So one of the first things was we had to answer, what do our kids need from an education perspective? So my kids were in French immersion school, and there's a possibility that when things go back to normal, that we may put them back into the public school system, which if that is the case, then I do want them to continue on with their French. But in order for that to happen, I have to continue on with French education. Many of you know French is not my first language. I only know un petit peu. And so enough to kind of get by, but not necessarily enough to teach them. So I am trying to kind of work within this and see how it goes. I think I have a curriculum that I can use for Vincent. For Violet, it's a little bit different because she is starting high school this year. And so in grade 9, when it comes to French immersion, she's basically going through to get a dual diploma. So she's getting her French diploma and she's getting her English diploma. And in order to do that, she has to take so many courses in French. And I believe that this year she has to take geography and health in French. And so I'm having the hardest time trying to find an actual French curriculum for those subjects. And so anyways, so we're kind of on a like not sure entirely. So I haven't pulled the kids directly out from the school system yet, but I am going to be doing our own homeschooling along with whatever they have for us for the remote learning for high school in French immersion, and Vincent's going into grade 7, so for grade 7. So we will kind of see how that looks for them, but the French was a big aspect of trying to continue them on in their education. The other thing that's really important to me with their education is that they get a good, solid, godly foundation. Now, I know that that foundation starts ultimately at home, but I love interweaving it into their education system. So for instance, when we were doing the homeschooling during the COVID part, like after March break, when school didn't go back to normal, Vincent was learning about Canadian history. And he was learning all about our Christian forefathers and, you know, how the Bible was integrated and how we were called the Dominion of Canada and how it was based on a psalm. And so I loved the fact that he was learning about our rich history from a Christian perspective and incorporating all of that godly history into knowing about the country that we live in. So I loved that to pieces. And I'm going to love continuing on with that. Obviously, in the traditional educational system, they don't get that. They don't teach them, you know, the godly principles that you learn in Christian education. So those are two important things for the education of my kids. The other thing I have to think about is their learning style. So how do they learn? Do they learn best when somebody's teaching them directly, or do they learn best on their own, or do they learn best when they're watching a video, reading? Like, how do they learn? And so one of the things that I've loved about this, and I guess I kind of had this little bit of a precursor testing period, or if you want to call it that, where we were able to kind of just see how things would work. And so Vincent, he would get up at 5 in the morning with me, and we would do schoolwork from like 5 to 8, and he would get all of his work done for the day, and we would just talk through it, and we'd have conversation. And he began just really talking to me, just casual conversation, but he began to tell me things that were happening in school, in his typical school classroom at school, that just he struggled with, and he didn't tell anybody about it. But because we were just sitting there bonding and stuff like that, he was able to just casually talk to me about it. Now, as a mom, my instincts all of a sudden went up, and I was like, hold on a second, you're dealing with what at school? And it made me want to really call up the teacher immediately and be like, did you know that this is happening? Now, I could have done that, but I didn't. I just talked him through it, because obviously he's going to have to learn how to handle these types of situations on his own. That's part of learning how to be an adult, is learning how to process through difficult situations. But I was thinking, if I don't have to throw him into that stressful situation, I don't want to have to do that. And then the other thing that I loved is that Violet would sleep in a little bit longer than Vincent. She doesn't quite get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but she takes a little bit of time to actually wake up. So she would start her work somewhere around 9 or 10, sometimes 11, and then she would work till about 5 in the afternoon. And it really flowed well. I could get all of the individual attention where I needed it to be, and I just felt like I was just bonding with my kids in a way that I previously hadn't been able to do when I was working full time and having, you know, the kids gone to school and being in ministry. It's just, there were so many things that, you know, without even me realizing it, my kids began to take, you know, a lower priority. And I don't want to do that. I know that they are my first ministry, and I want to throw everything into them that I can to give them an upper hand to be able to survive in the life that we live here on this earth. So I have to kind of see, so we're going to play around with it, see how things go. We're going to test it out the first couple weeks of school and see how things go. If we are loving the homeschooling aspect of things, and we begin to think that, you know, throwing them back into the education system is not going to work for us, then I will send in my letter of intent, and I will actually remove them from the education system. But that is kind of on the shelf at the moment. and just so that I can figure out how things are going to look for our whole family. And obviously I have to think about things in terms of, you know, our jobs and stuff. Right now we're not working, so we are at home. We have the opportunity to be at home with our kids, and so I feel like I can capitalize on that, and I'm just really enjoying the thought of that. We had to weigh the pros and cons about what was going to be the good parts about homeschooling and what's going to be the negative parts about homeschooling. And there's so many stigmas about homeschooling, one of them being that they're not socialized. And I don't really believe this. I know I haven't full-time homeschooled yet, but I do believe that there is more intentional socialization when it comes to homeschooling. So you have to be intentional about making friendships, and you have to be intentional about developing those friendships. And so I believe that there's an aspect of learning how to connect with people on that level, where when you're in the education system, you know, you're around a lot of kids, but especially in the school that my kids were in, they had a lot of people in the school, a lot of kids in the school, and they changed classes quite often, so they were rarely ever with the same kids from year to year. So they were having to meet new kids, and it was, you know, more of a stressful thing, where I want them to learn how to build strong, deep, lasting friendships. So I am kind of excited about the socialization aspect to see how that works for homeschooling. And I know, obviously, as an introvert myself, I do have to be more intentional about setting up opportunities for them to interact with their friends and to develop those friendships. But I think we've had a little bit of a taste of that over the last couple months while they weren't able to actually see their friends. So the other con, I guess, is that they're here at home the whole time. Like, you just, you know, we're all together as a family all the time, and there's not really a break there. Obviously Brian's not working, I'm not working, the kids both being at home, and, you know, Brian and I are trying to work on some side projects, and also trying to homeschool the kids, trying to do videos and editing and writing a book and writing a blog, and all of these aspects on top of renovating the house. It might be a little much, but I'm hoping that some of these things will be wrapped up in the next couple months, and we'll be able to kind of streamline some things. But I feel like homeschooling the kids will give us a little bit more of an opportunity for, you know, if Brian gets a job that is in Kingsville, for instance, you know, or just not in the close area, and we need to move outside of our immediate area or the school zone that we're in, then it's not going to affect their education. So, you know, it gives them a little bit more opportunities that way. All in all, I'm really excited about this. The kids are really excited about this, and we are just ready to see what God has for us and to be able to dive into this wholeheartedly. And this is just the decision that we feel is right for us right now in this moment. And we have decided that in December, we will reevaluate again and try to make a decision as to whether this is working, or if we need to actually put them back in the education system and let them continue on with the traditional educational model. If that goes back to normal, I don't even know, or I don't even know what normal is. Do you know what normal is? Anyways, that's what I have for you guys today. If you guys want to know more about homeschooling, or if you want to follow our journey about homeschooling, I don't know how long it's going to be, but if you want to follow it, or if you have questions, just comment below. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you want to see, and we will continue to make some videos, and maybe even we will see about getting a Brian in a conversation on this to see, you know, just to have a discussion about our whole thought process on homeschooling together, and how we come from two completely different mindsets on it, and how we came together in making that decision. So anyways, you guys have a great day, and we will see you guys soon.